Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience. I'm here tonight with my full review of the Apos Caspian. This headphone was loaned to me for review by Apos Audio, and it currently sells at $499 US. This headphone was manufactured for Apos by Kennerton Audio Equipment, and it was part of a joint venture with, please forgive me if I'm pronouncing this name wrong, but Sando Vitale from Sound News, I guess got together with Kennerton and Apos and helped tune this headphone and come up with the design. So anyway, this is a wired, full-size, over-the-ear, open-back headphone, but in my opinion, I would consider this a semi-open back. I don't think the entire grill area of it is open. This headphone actually has pretty good isolation as far as letting sound out or letting sound in. So they call it an open back. I would personally call it a semi-open back. But anyway, this headphone uses a 50mm dynamic driver that is a multi-layer cone with graphene coating, and it has an impedance of 33 ohms and a sensitivity of 115 decibels. Personally, that sounds a little bit high to me, but it is a very sensitive, very easy to drive headphone. In fact, this can easily be driven with a portable, and I'll talk about that a little further in a couple minutes. Anyway, Apos claims a weight of 378 grams. It weighed in on my scale at 391, so we're pretty close, just a few grams different. What's really nice about this headphone, what really stands out, is not only the build quality, but the materials that it's built of. The ear cups are a solid chunk of oak, and I guess it's oak. Anyway, yeah, oak, I'm sorry. I have some notes and I lost my place. But anyway, the ear cup is made of a solid piece of oak, machined out of it. It's not a veneer or a covering or anything. This is machined out of a solid piece of oak with has a nice dark stain on it and a shiny finish. So I guess it's got, you know, like a lacquer or polyurethane or something on it. Anyway, the yokes are made of aluminum. No, I'm sorry, the yokes are made of stainless steel, and the ear pads, which you can see here, they're not tapered, but they are real sheepskin leather, and they have memory foam in them. You can see by the way they come out real slow when you press them that they do have memory foam. But this headphone also has an aluminum grill, and I really don't see any plastic on this at all, except for maybe just this adjustment here. And you can see here how these adjust. They're different than the Kennerton headphones that have the self-adjusting strap, but this here, it has a padded strap, and the top of the head strap here is also sheepskin leather, and then it's a they call it echo leather on the inside, so I guess that means a synthetic leather, but nice padding, and it's easy to adjust. Got a little bit of flex here, so you know it can shape to your head. And anyway, did want to mention it comes with a very nice cable. Actually, it's a 2-meter cable, and this is pretty standard with Kennerton headphones. And I'll be honest, this is a nicer cable than a lot of headphones that cost 2 or 3 times as much as this one have. And it does have 4-pin mini XLR connections at the ear cup end. And that's something else I've never seen on a $500 headphone. I don't think I've ever seen a headphone under $1,000 that uses a 4-pin mini XLRs. But anyway, this cable is about 2 meters long. It's covered with a real nice cloth. It's soft, it's flexible, doesn't make any noise when it rubs on itself. But it does have a full-size 6.3 millimeter single-ended connection or 1/4 inch at the amp end. And I did want to mention that. The reason is Apos kind of promotes this, and this is a very easy to drive headphone, and they do mention that it's easily driven by a phone or portable device. But the problem is very few portable devices that I know of come with a 1/4 inch plug, and this doesn't screw up and convert down to 3.5 millimeters. So if you do want to use this with a portable or with a phone, you're probably going to have to get another cable for it to do that. I was looking through my cable collection, and I probably got about 30 headphone cables, and I only found one out of all of those that had the mini XLRs and a 3.5 connection at the amp end. And but what I did is, when I did test this with the portable, I have an Apos cable that has 4-pin mini XLRs and then a 4.4 millimeter balanced Pentacon connection at the amp end. So I was able to use that to test this with portable. So that's the only kind of issue I have, because a lot of cables that will have, you know, the screw-on adapter and go down to 3.5 millimeters. So even though this is a very nice cable, way nicer than the cable from any headphone I've seen in this price range, it's not really suited for portable use or with the phone. So like I said, you'll probably have to be looking at a extra cable to do that. So anyway, I'll move in a little closer here and give you a close-up view of the headphone. I did want to mention this also comes with a pretty nice carrying case. It's a typical Kennerton case, and I forgot to bring it in here for my review. I'm sorry about that, you know, but it's a fake leather little black case. But anyway, here's a closer look. Like I said, aluminum grills, machined oak ear cups with a very nice finish on them, stainless steel yokes, leather top to the headband, and your 4-pin mini XLR connections, and sheepskin leather ear pads with memory foam. They're very comfortable. And like I said, this weighed in on my scale at, what, 391 grams. That's actually pretty light for a full-size headphone. It's actually very comfortable, has just about the right amount of clamping force that it doesn't move around. You don't have to worry about if you lean over falling off or anything. But actually very comfortable, very soft ear pads. And like I said earlier, this actually does have quite a bit of isolation as far as sound coming in from the outside. Or I tried it last night. I had music playing and took it off and, you know, put the ear cuffs together so it was sealed up, and there was very little sound coming out of the back of these, not much more than you would hear from a closed back headphone. So like I said, in my opinion, this is, you know, I would call this a semi-open back. But anyway, getting into my review of this, as far as my music I used, if you've seen my reviews before, you know I use a typical mixture of different kinds of rock music, some pop music, some electronic, a lot of acoustical music, and little bit of orchestral music. And then my equipment that I used in reviewing this is, my source was primarily CDs. I used a Cambridge Audio CD transport, putting a digital signal into one of 3 different DACs that I used. I used the Topping D70S, that's the MQA version, the Denafrips Pontus 2, and the which is an R2R DAC, and the Audio GD R8, which is also an R2R DAC. All 3 outstanding DACs in my opinion. And then as far as headphone amps that I used with this headphone, I used the Burson Conductor 3 reference, which has its own built-in DAC, the Audio GD Master 9, the Waveborn Edelweiss 3 Preamp Plus, which is a OTL Type 2 amp. Oh, I also used the Felix Audio Echo, which is also an OTL Type 2 amp, and the Zendac, which is a little portable desktop amp that you can probably see in the background here. And then also for testing it with a portable, I used the iFi HipDAC 2. And like I said, this is a very, very easy headphone to drive. In fact, I'll go ahead and tell you about using it with the portable. Use this little iFi HipDAC 2. And because I did have the right cable, I used the balance output, the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon. And even with this on low gain, I didn't even need to use high gain. I could leave this on low gain, and I was still at only about 1030 on the volume knob. So even in low gain, it very easily drives these headphones. These are one of the easiest to drive headphones that I've reviewed so far. So anyway, getting into my opinions of the sound, I would basically describe the sound of this headphone as warm, bassy, rich, thick, lush, but not dark. It does have some pretty good treble presence, so it's not a dark headphone, but it's definitely not a neutral headphone. If you are looking for if you're looking for accuracy and a neutral headphone that's going to reproduce the music exactly the way it was recorded, this probably isn't the headphone for you. You might want to look at Hi-Fi Man or something like that in the same price range. But anyway, this headphone, Apos actually describes it as a fun headphone, and that's exactly what it is. This headphone has a heavy emphasis on the bass. It has good sub-bass extension and really hard-hitting mid-bass with a lot of punch and a lot of slam. This is a headphone that probably, I would think most bass heads could love this headphone. It's just, there's a lot of bass there, a lot of weight to it, and I don't think anybody is gonna think that this headphone is short on bass. The mid-range is, it's very rich and kind of on the warm side, and depends. The lower and middle mid-range are very present. They're up front, but the upper part of the mid-range is a little bit set back, a little bit recessed. And then getting into the treble, and Apos actually posts a frequency response graph of this headphone, and there's a pretty substantial dip that starts at about 2500 hertz, and it drops off substantially and doesn't come back up until about 7000 hertz. And the explanation that Apos gives is that makes this headphone not fatiguing, that those are the frequencies that wear out and fatigue your hearing or your ears. And this dip is put in here deliberately, and but in my opinion, I personally think it's a little bit too severe. It's a little bit too much. At one point, I think around 4000 hertz, the dip is actually down about 15 decibels, and it does what they claim it's supposed to do. It does make this a very easy headphone to listen to. It's very relaxed, very low fatigue, and very forgiving of less than perfect recordings. But what that does is it makes the very high end of the mid-range and the lower end of the treble, in my opinion, sound a little bit distant and almost lacking in detail, but I don't think that's the case. As far as detail, I think this headphone has very good detail, but because that lower treble there's such a dip in the frequency response, it's basically just at a lower volume, so it sounds more distant. And because of that lower volume in those frequencies, I don't hear as much detail, or the detail is just, like I said, the detail is at a lower volume, so it creates the illusion that the detail isn't there, even though it is. So I personally, when I listen to this, I feel like I'm missing a little bit in that range there. Getting into the treble, like I said, it's not a dark headphone. It has pretty good treble as far as, enough to, it doesn't sound bright, but it sounds, kind of neutral in the treble. But if you look at the graph, there's kind of a narrow spike right after the dip at about 7,000 hertz. And that's where it goes back up to the, in line with the lower frequencies below 2,500 hertz. Anyway, that spike does give it pretty good presence in the treble and brings the treble up front, but it's a narrow spike, and a lot of the treble is either hitting below that spike in the dip or above that spike where it dips off again. So once again, I feel like I'm missing out a little bit on some of the treble. Cymbals are definitely there. You definitely hear the cymbals, but what I'm hearing, I noticed the cymbals just sounded a little different than they did, say, compared to a Hifiman headphone. And Hifiman headphones are known for being a little bit on the bright side. Some people just think they are too bright. But anyway, compared to the Hifiman headphones, the strike of the cymbal when, the drumstick hits the cymbal, that sound is there. But that kind of lingering, the ringing, the the shimmer of the cymbals, it just fades away really fast. It's just not really there. So the cymbals is just a quick strike and then it kind of dies out, it decays really fast. So that's, and that's because of that narrow spike in the treble where, if something hits right at 7,000 hertz, it's there, it's real present. But if it doesn't hit exactly at 7,000 hertz, then the volume drops off quite a bit. So, like I said, it's not dark, but it's got that narrow spike, which kind of cuts out part of the treble. Once again, I feel like I'm missing out on a little bit because of that. Actually, above 7,000, I don't think it's that bad. It's the lower part, the below 7,000. Like I said, from like 2,500 to 7,000 hertz, there's a pretty good dip in there. It dips down like almost 15 decibels at about 4,000, then goes back up a little bit, and then takes another dip at like about, excuse me, about 5,500. Excuse me just a second. Believe it or not, I'm still heating with wood. It's like, what, April 18th or something? Well into what should be the mowing season, and I'm still heating with wood right now, so it's warm in my house and the air is dry, so please excuse me. My throat dries out when I talk too much. So anyway, the detail I mentioned a minute ago, the detail is actually really good on this headphone, but like I said, can sound kind of distant in the lower treble. Getting into the sound stage, I went back and I looked at my first impressions, and at that time I'd only had a couple hours with this headphone, and since then I put in a lot of hours, had a lot more time to listen to it. And I've kind of changed my mind. I said at that time that the soundstage was kind of narrow, and I take that back. My opinion now, after putting more time on this headphone, is it actually has a pretty decent soundstage. It's not the widest in the world, but it has a very adequate, at least average soundstage. It does have pretty good width, and it actually has pretty good layering, where I'm actually hearing things at different distances from my ears. It has decent depth to the soundstage, not exceptional. I'm not really hearing sounds way out in front of me, but there's a little bit of depth to it. But I'm actually hearing sounds quite a bit out to the side, and at least 2 or 3 different distances from my ears. So the soundstage, it's got decent depth, decent height, and pretty good width to it. And then the imaging, I said in my first impressions video that I thought the imaging was a little bit vague, and it's not super pinpoint. You know, it's not the most, you know, exact pinpoint imaging that I've heard, but it's pretty decent. You know, like I said, I called it a little bit vague, but I don't really see that now after more time. I would say the imaging is actually pretty good on this. I can locate each of the instruments in their own space, and the separation between instruments is actually pretty good on this. As far as dynamics, especially in the bass, the mid bass is very dynamic on this headphone. It's got a lot of slam in the mid bass, and not as much up into the higher frequencies, mid-range. Like I said, once you get into the lower treble, that dip, it doesn't sound dynamic in that area, but in the mid-bass, this is definitely a dynamic, punchy headphone. As far as fatigue, I mentioned this earlier, very low fatigue. This headphone you can wear for hours, and that was the idea behind this dip, you know, in the lower treble, that these are the frequencies that fatigue your ears after a long time, and especially if recordings aren't done real well in a less than perfect recording, that, you know, lower treble range can definitely get to you and wear you out fast. So fatigue is very low on this. This is a headphone that's just very relaxed sounding, very easy going, and you can just listen to this for hours, and it's also very, very forgiving. This is a headphone that if a recording is less than perfect, it's not going to emphasize that. It's not going to, you know, put that in your face that this is a bad recording. I mean, you can listen to almost any recording and it's going to sound good on this. You know, even like, say, background hiss. If a recording has some background hiss from the studio, that is going to fall into that dip. I'm not sure where background hiss is. I think it falls in around 6,000 hertz, and that's still in that dip. So actually the background on almost any recording is going to sound really black, you know, really void of any background hiss or background noises like that. I did want to do a little bit of comparison with this while I have it, and just shortly after I did my first impressions video on this headphone, I received the Hifiman Edition XS. And the reason I really want to compare the two is that falls in at exactly the same price at $499, and I did my first impressions video of that and had some more time to listen to it, and actually did a little comparison between that and this headphone. And the Edition XS is a headphone I really like. For the last 3 years I've been recommending the Sundara as the best headphone at its price at $350. Well, the Sundara is now, just recently, a couple days ago, pretty much everyone dropped the price of the Sundara to $299, and the Edition XS is actually more similar to the Ananda, which has the oval ear cups, the long ear cups, and I guess there was an Edition, Hifiman Edition X, I'm not sure. I didn't hear any of those, but I've reviewed the Aria, and it's the same shape ear cups as the Aria has. I did the version 1 and the version 3 stealth version of that. Well, anyway, the Edition XS is a very neutral headphone. Some people would call it bright, and some people say it lacks bass, but I would just call it very neutral, very detailed. And in my opinion, the Edition XS is a definite step up from the Sundara. It's a very nice headphone. But anyway, it happens to fall in at the same price as this. So I did a little comparison. And without a doubt, I mean, this headphone just has way more bass. The Edition XS has decent bass, but it's more on a neutral level, where this has more extension into the sub bass. This has more a lot more weight to the mid bass and a lot more slam in the bass. But where the Edition XS shines is up in that upper mid-range, lower treble. It just has a lot more presence. It's a lot more upfront and a lot more detail up in those ranges. As far as build quality, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with the build quality of the Edition XS, but it's not on the level of this headphone. I mean, this was built by Kennerton, and I've reviewed a lot of Kennerton headphones, and they've always had exceptional build quality. And what the main thing is those materials, where the Hifiman Edition XS is built of plastics and imitation leathers and all that. The ear cups on the Edition XS are plastic. These are real oak. I mean, this has aluminum grills. The build quality, you know, so I mean, they're two completely different headphones, and basically I would say if you're looking for something that's neutral and accurate, that you're going to get exceptional detail out of, then the Edition XS is probably a better headphone for you. But if you are one of those people that thinks that Hifiman headphones are too bright, or that Hifiman headphones don't have enough bass, then maybe this is a headphone for you. This definitely, I mean, like I said, this is a headphone that bass lovers, I think, could love. It's just got a lot of weight, a lot of punch, a lot of slam to the bass. And it is a fun headphone. It's not the most accurate headphone in the world, but it's a lot of fun to listen to. And I really do enjoy listening to this with a lot of music, and especially with rock music, a lot of older rock music. The bass was just recorded kind of on a lower level than a lot of more recent modern music. And you know, a lot of that's the older rock music I just find kind of boring, kind of flat with a neutral headphone. And I'll give you an example. Back when I was in high school, one of my favorite bands was Rush. And I remember when the album Moving Pictures came out, that's the one with Tom Sawyer and Red Barchetta and all that stuff. Okay, if I go back and listen to that now with a neutral headphone, it just seems kind of, it doesn't sound the way I remember it. You know, I was listening to it with big speakers and probably the bass turned up a bit, and it just sounds kind of flat and kind of boring to me. Where if I listen to Moving Pictures by Rush with this headphone, it sounds the way I remember it as a teenager. It's got that, you know, the bass guitar really comes through, really has some weight. The bass drums really have some slam, and I just love the way it sounds through these headphones. I will admit, when I compared it to the Hifiman Edition XS, it doesn't have the detail up in especially the lower treble, where the Edition XS was bringing out a lot more in the cymbals, the chimes, you know, the bells, all that. That definitely was a better headphone up in that area. But, you know, with this one, it's just, you know, it's there, but it's just laid back. It's sitting back a ways. It's not as present. But with the Edition XS, like I said, the bass drum, the bass guitar just sound flat and boring, where this headphone just gives it excitement, makes it feel the way I remembered listening to it when I was a teenager. And, you know, like I said, older rock music like that, I just love to listen to it with these headphones. Another example I'll give you is back when I was probably, I don't know, like early 20s, about 21 or so. I had this big, huge stereo in my car with a pair of 15-inch subwoofers in the back. And I know a lot of you younger people weren't in that generation where we built cars that when you went down the road, you could hear the whole car vibrating from the subwoofers and all that. But anyway, I had these twin 15-inch subwoofers in my car and can probably hit about 130 decibels in my car. It's a wonder I can hear it all now, or still. But anyway, I had this favorite CD. It was called, it was by the Human League, and it was called Unlimited Love and Dancing or something like that. It was extended remixes of some of their popular songs. And it just had a ton of bass, and I remember listening to that in my car, and with those 15-inch subwoofers, it would just rattle the whole car. You could actually feel the bass hitting your chest. You could, I'd have girls in my car, and they'd say they felt their hair moving and that sort of thing. Well, anyway, if I go back and listen to that CD, I still have it. With any kind of even remotely neutral headphone, it just sounds boring to me. It completely lacks that excitement that I felt in my car. And this headphone, it brings back the memories. I mean, with this headphone, it's got so much weight and punch to the bass that it sounds the way it did in my car. And, it almost made me cry. It brought back memories of how that sounded. And I was just, that was like the demo disc I used to, impress people with my car stereo. And anyway, this headphone can reproduce that same sound that, like a Hi-Fi Man or some neutral headphone just can't even touch. So, for the right music, this headphone is a lot of fun, and I really like it. I can't say that, I would, if I had to pick only one headphone to listen to all the time, this probably wouldn't be it, because like I said, I feel like I'd be missing a little bit up there in the lower treble, and all I'd be losing some detail. But for an occasional headphone, when I just want to listen to something and just be able to feel that bass and that thump to the music and all that, I mean, this headphone can hardly be beat. One that did sound a little bit like this, a headphone that actually had a similar sound signature, is the Meza 99 Classic that I reviewed about 3 years ago. But compared to that, this has more bass, it goes lower, it has more weight to the mid bass, it has more slam, and this headphone, the bass is tighter and better controlled, and it's not boomy or muddy, where the Meza with some music did get a little boomy or a little bit muddy in the bass. And this just is a lot more solid and better controlled bass. But the rest of the frequency response is similar. Meza had that similar narrow peak in the treble, where some of the treble came out, crystal clear, but parts of the treble were kind of distant. So in my opinion, this is kind of a similar but better version of the Meza 99 Classic. So if you like that headphone, you probably love this headphone. And there's a lot of people out there that love the Meza 99 Classic. Wasn't exactly my cup of tea. I prefer a headphone that's a little bit more neutral, a little more accurate. These days I do like a little bit of emphasis in the bass, but not a huge amount. But anyway, but the Meza 99 Classic has a huge following. There are a lot of people that like it, and if you're one of those people, you will probably love this headphone, because it sounds a whole lot like the Meza 99 Classic, but more bass, better controlled bass, and more detail too, up through the mid-range and all that. And it's not a closed back, but it's almost. It doesn't leak much sound. So for that person, this is going to be a great headphone. For a person that only has one headphone, you might want something a little more neutral. If you can afford more than one headphone, this might be the headphone that you want, for pulling out those old rock albums and all that you used to crank the bass up on and want to hear them the way you used to. So anyway, I just wanted to mention before I wrap this up, there's a few things that I'm not crazy about. One thing, the bass can be a little overwhelming at times. I was listening to some Madonna on this, and I just thought the bass was... most of her music, the bass has a bit of emphasis on it, and at times it was just a little overwhelming to me. I actually tried hooking this up, running this through my shit low-key equalizer. And if I turn the bass down, and that would be at 20 hertz, it has 4 knobs. And if I turn the bass knob down to about 10 o'clock, backed it off a little bit, actually cutting the bass, and then bumped the third knob, which I think, what's the third knob? Is that 2000? I think it's 2000 hertz. If I bump that one up to about 2 o'clock, it really brought more that lower treble, the detail out, and cut the bass a little bit. And actually, it made it a more neutral, more to my liking headphone. I actually really liked it that way. But so it can be EQ'd. It responds real well. If this were your only headphone and you want to listen more neutral with, the $149 shit low-key, you can adjust it to sound, a lot more neutral and more accurate pretty easily. Like I said, that dip that was deliberately put in the lower treble to make the headphone less fatiguing, I personally think the dip is a little bit too severe. If it was up to me, I would have brought it up, 5 or 10 decibels, not put as much of a dip in there. And then the cable is just, even though it's a very nice cable, a very high quality cable for a $500 headphone, you've got the issue of you've got a headphone that is great for using with a portable, but the cable that comes with it, with the 6.3 millimeter plug, I don't know of any, I'm not that big into portable units, but I'm doubting that there's many portables out there that can use a 6.3 millimeter plug, so you're looking at a second cable. Things I really like, the bass. Even though the bass is something I don't always like, the bass when I'm in the mood is great. I love the bass. It's because it is so well controlled. The building materials are outstanding in this for this price of headphone. The comfort's great. Female vocals, if I didn't mention it already, just very warm, very lush, very rich, and it gives most female vocals an almost seductive sound. I mean, it's just really, really enjoyable. And what else? Oh, it's just, like I said, this headphone's great with most rock, pop, electronic, but if you're into like jazz or acoustical or something, you might want to go more the direction of the Hifiman. In fact, if I have time, if I don't have to send these back right away, I might try to do a comparison, sort of a direct kind of shootout with this and the Hifiman Edition XS, because they are at exactly the same price, and they're very different headphones, and each is going to have its strong point, so I might try to do that if I can. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you're all welcome to join us at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We're up to 16.1 thousand members, so hope to see you there. Once again, thanks for watching my video.